Dear friends, we should all express our deep appreciation to members of the boards of Friends of Persian Culture for having arranged this gathering online. I too would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the organizers of this conference for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts on fundamental principles underpinning constructive social change and the role of individuals, institutions, and community. As an introduction, let me note that humanity throughout history has been pursuing constructive social change, hoping that one day we all can live in a world whose distinguishing features are social justice and human dignity. A review of the past shows that prior to the 19th century, despite contradicting interpretations of the nature of religion, and notwithstanding the various forms of corruption and the injustices committed in the name of religion, divine authority was the main source of guidance for humanity. However, in the early part of the 20th century, a materialistic interpretation of the world of existence began to be instilled in the hearts and minds of the peoples of the world, an interpretation that has had a direct impact on the process of social change and which continues to this day. This ideology managed to influence and dominate centers of power and information throughout the world and exerted every effort to ensure that no other school of thought could prevail and thereby become an obstacle to furthering economic exploitation in the world. Consequently, the economic schemes of certain interest groups, the power-seeking ambitions of various political leaders, and the use of technology and industry as instruments to gain economic and social advantages all became important factors in an array of efforts that continue to be made in this day with a view to influencing social change. Even though during this period constructive progresses have been made throughout the field of economics, science, and technology, progress so remarkable as to make the physical unity of nations possible, much pain and suffering has also been caused, which, if not remedied, will not only create a great obstacle in the path of humanity's collective well beings, but could also seriously jeopardize gains made thus far in the various aspects of economic affairs. Today, factors affecting social change are often presented by intellectuals and other persons of influence on the basis of various theories, sometimes opposing, and each of the theories is built on a set of deep-seated beliefs, some of which are stated explicitly and others simply implicit in nature. These often unexamined beliefs cover such issues as human nature, the purpose of life in this world, the role of religion in advancing society, and the roles that individuals and communities play in effecting change. While time constraints make it impossible to adequately cover any of these views, I would like to mention briefly two completely contradicting views about the roles of the individual and the community in effecting social change. One is the view that says social change occurs primarily through the individual, implying that when a significant number of people go through appreciable individual transformation, social change ensues automatically. Others hold the contrary view that the individual is a product of society and say that no social change or transformation is feasible unless social structures, especially political structures, change. Today I am able only very briefly to present my personal understanding of Baha'i view about the foundation of constructive social change and the role of the individual and institutions in effecting that change. The Baha'i faith has a spiritual view of the world of existence. Baha'i views of social change are also inseparably linked to a particular concept of history. Baha'is believe that just as an infant passes through the stages of childhood and adolescence and reaches the stage of maturity, humankind as a single entity has also traveled through the stage of its childhood and is now in the throes of its adolescence and on the threshold of its collective maturity. Just as period of adolescence is a tumultuous time filled with emotions signaling the beginning of a new stage of life for the person, the confusion in the world today can also be seen as the sign of a new stage of life for mankind. Just as the emotions of the period of adolescence signal the manifestation of new possibilities for the progress of the individual, the tumult that characterizes the world today is also an indication that the world is pregnant with new and unprecedented possibilities for progress, the like of which humanity has not ever seen. Just as the individual, while entering the stage of maturity, questions the validity of many of the norms, traditions, and relationships of the childhood period, and searches for fresh standards to fulfill the needs of his or her new life, similarly, the world of humanity, upon entering the threshold of its collective maturity, faces the truth that bygone standards, accepted mores of past centuries, and social structures and institutions of previous ages no longer have the necessary efficacy to satisfy the needs of a new life in a world that is embracing the concept of one homeland for the entire human race. It can be stated without hesitation that the current chaos and widespread dissatisfaction, especially among the youth, are directly related to the lack of collective readiness for a fair reconsideration of these standards, structures, and past networks of relationships. Groups that are focused solely on their own self-interest and insist on the continuation of outworn traditional tendencies make the consideration of these standards more complex and more difficult. In relation to social transformation, Baha'is also believe in the interaction of two fundamental social processes. One is the process of disintegration and destruction, and the other, the process of integration and construction. Each one of these two processes propel the world in its own way towards collective maturity. The signs of the process of disintegration can be seen in the inadequacies of legitimate and respected institutions of the past in meeting the current needs of the populations they purport to serve. Even though the destructive forces assailing humanity result in great pain and suffering, they can also cause the removal of barriers to human progress and create space and thirst for reconstruction. The process of integration, on the other hand, brings together diverse groups, strengthens cooperation, and constructively creates fresh possibilities within an overarching vision of unity in diversity. Baha'is believe that this process of integration will gain momentum day by day and that eventually human affairs will, through an organic and necessarily long-term process, take a completely new organizational form. After this brief introduction, let me now say that the Baha'i Faith, which was founded at the threshold of the period of humanity's collective maturity, is a new concept of religion in which the purpose of religion is the empowerment of individuals to contribute to a process of constructive social change. In addition to emphasizing the importance of the spiritual progress of the individual, the faith has a number of principles and teachings, as well as concepts, methods, and approaches, all coherent with those principles and teachings that are designed to stimulate and direct constructive social change. From a Baha'i point of view, the pivotal principle for social change is the unity of humankind. Indeed, the oneness of the human race is at the foundation of all Baha'i actions, implying that all individual and collective efforts of the Baha'is are undertaken with a view to the realization of this essential oneness, with all its vast social, economic, and political implications. Recent developments related to the spread of the coronavirus and the unprecedented international reaction in support of racial unity are expressions of public awareness of the vital importance of the principle of racial equality for humanity's progress. From a Baha'i perspective, the oneness of humanity with all its implications must be the guiding principle of the transformation of human societies through an organic and constructive process. Otherwise, the intended changes will not be easily achieved. Only the form and appearance of social oppression and injustice will change. From a Baha'i point of view, the principle of oneness of humanity is not merely calling for unity or even just for promoting widespread collaboration. Rather, it goes far beyond that. It seeks to unify humanity in one global family. This oneness requires a complete rethinking of all forms of relationships that influence social stability and endurance. Unfortunately, today we don't have the time to talk about different implications of this principle. In the organic process of the unification of the entire human race, the first priority in laying the foundation for constructive social change are rectitude of conduct and a sound moral standard. However, the promotion of a moral standard requires a spiritual concept of the world of existence, such that individuals regard themselves as equal before the law and can see attributes of God in everyone. This spiritual concept of the world of existence can only be promoted, given that religion has been the source of moral guidance to humanity, if the new concept of religion promotes the equality of every human being as a universally accepted principle, considers the elimination of prejudice and abandonment of superstitions imperative, rejects violence entirely, emphasizes the love of humanity and the promotion of justice to be the main focus of individual and collective life, promotes harmony of science and religion, helps individuals to be world-embracing rather than self-centered in vision, focuses its teaching on making service to humanity and striving assiduously for the establishment of a world civilization based on unity in diversity, the prime focus of the individual's life, and provides effective provisions to avoid the repeat of the past corruptions of religion. This is indeed the new concept of religion, the Baha'i Faith, presented to humanity in mid-19th century by Baha'u'llah. In the new concept of religion, science and religion are considered two independent but complementary systems of knowledge. It demands that religion must be in harmony with science, otherwise it is superstition, and scientific knowledge must be put to use based on religious truth, otherwise it becomes merely a tool of materialism. It is through these two systems that humanity's innate capacities have been nurtured in the past. It is these two systems of knowledge that have acted as the source and the foundation of human civilization. Human consciousness, which distinguishes the human being from other creatures, depends on these two systems of knowledge. Freedom to investigate and to nurture an individual's latent capacities must therefore be preserved and protected. People should be free to know. It is this freedom that makes it a moral imperative to respect many of the rights enshrined in the Declaration of Human Rights and the covenants related to it, such as the right to universal education, free access to information, participation in all aspects of social life, and freedom of thought and belief, which includes freedom of religion and freedom of expression. All to be promoted along with obligations of individual to the society. From a Baha'i perspective, constructive and sustainable social change rests upon the spiritual transformation of society. In the past, for the majority, scriptures have been a source of knowledge and wisdom, have contributed significantly to the development of the human's power of understanding, and endowed it with a new eye, a new ear, a new heart, and a new mind. The positive impact of religion on the richness and vastness of world literature, which has in turn impacted social change, is obvious to all. Religions have inspired astonishing successes in science, the arts, and in social life. The power and influence of religion in bringing about heroic attributes, self-discipline, and self-sacrifice among the great masses of people is an undeniable fact. Religious teachings have in many instances influenced civil legislation and resulted in the refinement of relationships and the exaltation of the station of the human being. Despite the ups and downs of the past, it can be said that the great religions throughout history have been among the main stimulants of human progress. Religions have been a force propelling human evolution, an evolution that has had its earliest beginnings in the birth of family life, its subsequent development in the achievement of tribal solidarity, leading in turn to the constitution of the city-state and expanding later into the institution of independent and sovereign nations. Humanity, on the threshold of its collective maturity, is now in need of social transformation that is firmly based on the principle of the unity of mankind. If the great religions have in the past been among the prime forces effecting social progress, why then is religion in the present time increasingly set aside as an effective element in shaping the collective life of humankind? Among the reasons for this state of affairs, three stand as preeminent. First is the deceptive promises of the school of materialism, which promotes consumerism and falsely prescribes the acquisition of material needs as the means of solving all the problems faced by humanity. Materialism distracts a focused and purposeful life and promotes irreligiousness, both directly and indirectly. Second is the prevailing concept that defines religion according to those religions that are viewed as traditional. The truth is that each of these religions is shaped by the frame of its holy book and the historical context of the time in which it appeared. Each has different and even contradictory sects, none of which are capable of responding adequately to the demands and dictates of life in the 21st century. The third reason is the fact that the corruption, oppression, cruelty, and the widespread injustices that have and that continue to be made in the name of religion have created a widespread negative impression and deep mistrust of religion in the minds of many people around the world, including many influential people and leaders of society. This regrettable situation makes even efforts to present the new concept of religion as outlined in the teachings and principles of the Baha'i faith for investigation or even for reflection quite challenging. Let me now share with you some thoughts about the role of the individual, the community, and institutions in social transformation. From a Baha'i point of view, individuals, communities, and institutions are three inseparable protagonists in advancing civilization, each of which plays a particular and fundamental role in social transformation. The implications of humanity's approaching the threshold of its collective maturity demand that new definition for each of these three protagonists be adopted. The Baha'i Faith has specific and clear ideas for each in this regard. In relation to the individual, it describes the nature of humanness as being twofold, with human beings possessing both a material and a spiritual aspect. Further, it regards the essence of human existence to be spiritual. Baha'is believe that even though human shares many aspects of material life with animals, human soul has unfathomable capacities that can gradually blossom in many dimensions, particularly when forces dominating individual and collective life benefit from a balance between the material and the spiritual. It further holds that individuals indeed have the capacity to acquire and maintain this balance in life. Consider how a child from its infancy shows signs of self-centeredness and see everything in terms of his or her own self. With proper education, the child learns to share toys and other personal belongings with its sisters and brothers. Gradually, the child learns to become an active and collaborative member of its family and to sacrifice for family members and other relatives. The same child with more education can learn to sacrifice its own interest for the interest of the community and its homeland. With even greater and higher levels of training, the child learns to be concerned with the well-being of humanity as a whole and be kind to everyone, to live a life devoted to service and to consider its own well-being, the well-being of its family, community, and the nation within a context of the well-being and comfort of the entire world. The new concept of religion not only promotes rectitude of conduct and moral standards and leaves the individual responsible for the progress of their own spiritual life, but can also inspire individuals to focus their personal life on this fact that humankind has been created for the betterment of the world and for contributing to an ever-advancing civilization, and that the individual can and must be an agent of change and a protagonist in constructive social transformation and the betterment of the world. The Baha'i perspective sees that the individual's private and social lives are intertwined, and individuals' efforts to acquire deep spiritual attributes and to participate actively in conscious collective action aimed at constructive social transformation are indeed coherent aspects of a single, complex, twofold process. On the one hand, the individual's participation in collective activities that strive for social progress is motivated by the desire to improve their own personal life. And on the other, the more a person acquires a praiseworthy character, their desire and will to serve and sacrifice towards the betterment of the society grows ever greater and stronger. The Baha'i point of view also perceives that the change in social structure needed for constructive social transformation is not limited to change in the political realm. Rather, it should include change in other structures of society, such as those that are cultural, economic, and social in nature. With this in mind, I now briefly point out the role of the individual in constructive social transformation. In the world today, various patterns of personal and collective life are forcefully offered and promoted by different groups with different visions and motives. In such a world, it is individuals who must choose on what principles they wish to build their lives. Are they inclined to move towards an individualistic society characterized by brutal and all-pervasive competition as a way to promote their personal interests? Or do they see a diverse, dynamic, but united community as essential to efforts aimed at rescuing humanity from current social problems? Are they allowing themselves to be deceived by consumerism and focusing their lives on satisfying their material needs? Or do they believe in latent capacities of the human soul which can, with material and spiritual education, bring about extraordinary progress for themselves and for their community? Would they allow any room in society for prejudice and discriminations of any kind, where ignorant and selfish groups would deprive large number of people to develop their full capacities? Or do they prefer to weave the threads of love for humanity in the very fabric of society and consider that to be the foundation for all human relations. Do they believe that the promotion of their own personal interest is the only way to have a happy and fruitful life? Or do they see their own prosperity in the prosperity of all, seeking to establish cordial and unfettered consultation among the different elements of a society that would lead to a deeper appreciation and a keener understanding of the many profound and interrelated concepts pertaining to social and economic development, and holding fast to the premise that just as the viability of every cell and every organ is contingent upon the health of the body as a whole, so should the prosperity of every individual, every family, every people be sought in the well-being of the entire human race, in promoting a civilization that ensures the satisfaction of both the material and the spiritual needs of all humanity. The question that we all should ask is this: if the desired pattern and the ideal way of life does not at this time exist on the large scale, are we to set aside the social problems of today and thoughtlessly allow ourselves to be enraptured by the pomp and pageantry of seductive materialistic advances and to blindly imitate them? Or do we commit, while appreciating humanity's past, to build a new pattern of collective life, using the fresh energy and motivations generated by the arrival of the age of humanity's collective maturity? Knowing for certain that building a new pattern of collective life is not a simple undertaking, could we not, as a first step, agree on and choose the principles upon which our desired new pattern will be built, and then, committing to this agreement, proceed with patience, sacrifice, and in a posture of learning, strive to build that society in an organic manner? How would we, on this path, respond to the disappointments and despair resulting from the slowness of the progress, or from the conflict of ideas and the spread of confusion caused by various interest groups? Initiating a process of consultation about these principles and raising these questions will surely be a significant help in our efforts to confront the challenges ahead. From the Baha'i point of view, creating a progressive, peaceful, and united world is not only possible, but also inescapable, because it constitutes the next natural stage in the organic evolution of human social transformation. Thus, there is a choice before the peoples of the world, both collectively and as individuals. Is such a peaceful world to come about through a deliberate and consultative process that includes the individuals as active participants in constructive social transformation? Or will it emerge only after the experience of numerous disasters resulting from tenacious attachment to past traditions or structures? Bringing about a constructive social transformation is not, of course, possible solely through individual initiative, but must rather be effective through a collective endeavor in which both communities and institutions also have a fundamental role. A community, from a Baha'i point of view, is an organic unit of civilization comprising individuals, families, and institutions. It is an entity that is more than the sum of its parts. A community passes through various stages on its path to maturity, and it does have an impact on individuals. When a community's objective is to contribute to the betterment of the world, it creates an environment in which the individual and collective will are integrated, the common good takes a higher priority than individual interests, and mutual support, collaboration, taking joy in the success of others, advancing individual initiatives within a collective framework, and participation in collaborative efforts become a distinguishing characteristic of culture. Fear has no place in such a community. The power of the individual is multiplied through unity and cooperation. An environment and conditions are thus created to build new capabilities and capacities that could not have been imagined before. Such an environment will surely foster the material advancement and spiritual empowerment of individuals, so that each one can indeed see themselves as an active participant in the betterment of the world and the fulfillment of collective well-being. In such an environment, there is a remarkable increase as well in the efficiency of the institutions in supporting and guiding the affairs. The new concept of religion promotes a fresh understanding of the concept of power. Whereas power has traditionally been used to control, manipulate, and even oppress others, it is now to be used for the empowerment of others. Based on this, Baha'i views say that the role of institutions in constructive social change is mainly to guide and empower individuals, strengthen communities, and coordinate activities. Thus, designing and executing plans for individual and collective capacity building is one of the most fundamental duties of institutions. They are to ensure that all interested individuals have the freedom to be responsible for their own material and spiritual progress, and that each is able to actively contribute to the establishment of a new social order. To succeed in discharging their duties, institutions must receive the loving and unhesitating support of individuals and communities. Not only must members of institutions not see themselves as being the worthiest for membership, instead they must consider their election or appointment as a spiritual blessing to serve both individual and the community with utmost humility. Members of institutions must be absolutely distracted from personal interests and must strive wholeheartedly to serve the collective welfare and the material and spiritual progress of the community. They must make every effort to establish the trust, heartfelt respect, and support of the people within their jurisdiction. In this respect, it behooves them to become aware of the real needs, thoughts, and aspirations of individuals and the community, and to consult with them about the decisions the institutions make or are to make. They must use existing resources in the community, such as individual energy and talents, and channel them towards improving the community. They must give the highest priority to creating and preserving unity. They must consider justice and love as essential characteristics for the work of institutions and recognize people's participation in economic and social development endeavors as the foundation for this justice. I go back to the role of the individual and say that from a Baha'i point of view, individuals also have a vital role in establishing, strengthening, and supporting communities and institutions. It is the individual who can be a torch of hope, unity, and progress in the community. It is the individual who has the obligation to participate wholeheartedly in a process of election that is devoid of the theatrical politics of the day to determine the members of the institutions. Having complete freedom in the election of the members of the institutions, it is the individual who presents his or her suggestions and constructive criticism to the institutions, actively support their work, and considers it a spiritual obligation to channel his or her individual efforts towards the continuous evolution and maturity of the institutions. It is the individual who should be aware that in the path of constructive social transformation, there are areas in which individuals can offer their initiatives, while there are other areas which are the exclusive domain of the institutions. Therefore, individuals' wholehearted obedience to institutional guidance and direction is essential. And this is not blind obedience, but an obedience that portends the creation of a new race of men. Sound and dynamic relationship between the individual, the community, and the institutions must therefore be seen as one of the characteristics of constructive social transformation in humanity's age of collective maturity. The Baha'i community rejects the assumption that the relationship between these three protagonists is necessarily competitive and divisive, emphasizing instead that the foundation of this relationship, with reliance on extraordinary powers of human spirit, is cooperation, reciprocity, which is a manifestation of the interdependence that governs the world of existence. The standard set before individuals is that they elect their representatives from among those who have a world-embracing vision and who are free of self-centeredness. At the same time, those who are elected are to strive to see themselves responsible for the well-being of the whole of mankind. In such an atmosphere, individuals realize that unless good intentions and serious efforts are channeled in the right direction, they will not necessarily be fruitful. That absolute individual freedom must be tempered through consultation and individual sacrifice, and individual initiatives must be in harmony with collective efforts and the work of the institutions. All in all, individuals are enjoined not focus on personal gain and above all to regard themselves as servants of humanity. The community is to be an environment in which love, encouragement, support, and empowerment are constantly fostered. Institutions aim at empowering others, and the membership strives for true humility and sees service as an obligation. The individual, community, and institutions have the same source of inspiration and all endeavor within the same overall framework for action. Each of the three protagonists consider unity to be the highest priority for all. For them, the well-being of individuals is to be achieved in collective well-being, and as a result, everyone gives priority to collective interests in contrast to individual interests. Baha'is strongly believe that with the coming of the age of humanity's collective maturity, and with the establishment of a new concept of religion, a new season, a new chapter has opened in the history of the world, and constructive forces are on the move, forces which can enable a significantly large number of inhabitants of the earth to initiate, by adherence to spiritual principles and scientific facts, a dynamic and constructive process that will lead to the establishment of a global civilization, a civilization that ensures the material and spiritual needs of mankind. Support of this process has been the concern of the Baha'i community from its inception, and it has contributed throughout the various stages of its growth and maturity to the advancement of that process as its resources and circumstances have permitted. Among the current fundamental activities of the Baha'i community throughout the world is the operation of an extensive program of learning how to assist individuals, communities, and institutions to increase their capacity to advance civilization and undertake efforts aimed at the betterment of the world. The object of the learning is to answer questions such as these. How can large number of people from different backgrounds be gathered in an environment devoid of division and discord, and which promotes higher levels of unity of thought and action? How can increasing numbers of women and men be assisted to abandon apathy and lethargy and become active in the path of advancing their own as well as others' spiritual and social progress? How can a significant number of youth be empowered to pass through the critical, sensitive stages of their life and spend their abundant energy in the path of service to the advancement of a global civilization? How can a consultative process be established in which decisions are made on the basis of the priority of the common good, detached from partiality and self-interest, and on the basis of scientific information rooted in practical experience? Participation in this program is open to all those who are interested in the unity of humankind. Any individual from any background or origin who is attracted to the vision of Baha'u'llah for the future of humanity is invited to join in the efforts to enhance his or her capacity in the path of serving the world of humanity, and in the company of other like-minded persons contribute to the realization of this vision. This program, these activities, and these efforts are being undertaken in more than 5,000 geographic clusters of villages, cities, and towns in almost all of the nations in the 5 continents of the world. The focus is on collective capacity building such that individuals, communities, and institutions learn how the teachings and principles which are considered to be the foundations of the civilization's they strive to build can be translated into action through purposeful and coherent approaches. The aim of the learning is to build communities in which blind obedience and coercion in belief or lifestyle are replaced with the complete freedom of the individual to search for truth and choose her or his own way of life, a life of active participation in the betterment of the world, a life that is marked by independent investigation of reality, such that it is absent of outmoded customs and creeds, renounces mindless acceptance of any doctrine or dogma, whether purveyed from the pulpit or on political platforms, declines to be buffeted about in the ever-changing currents running through social media, is liberated from any sense of superiority, and is empowered through a refusal to accept or uphold any form of prejudice or discrimination. Communities that utilize two spheres of knowledge, science and religion, for their progress, believe in the full equality of men and women, are conscious of the importance of family life, pay special attention to the spiritual education of children and junior youth, strive to promote interconnectedness, friendship, and cooperation, believing that the experience in building such communities can be conducive to creating an environment in which the process of civilization building and constructive social change based on the unity of humankind advances. Dear friends, I hope you find the thoughts I shared with you useful in the social discourses you participate in. Have a good day. Thank you.